even though you guys don't get these a lot, I know
located
you've got a ton in your district just because everything old around here, you're gonna have a lot of bridge trusses and arch timber trusses, all of that, and we cut them all the same. So those are typically spaced 20 feet apart, and then have purlins run in the, at right angles to them, 12 or 16 inches on center. And a lot of guys have tried in the past, in a lot of the videos you see out there, they'll tell you to louver them and I've seen a bunch of different stuff out there, but the tried and true method for these, anything 1x6 sheeted, is dicing. Super efficient operation. The way we're gonna show you, we mark each rafter because of course usually what we have up here now downtown, you'll see some of them if you look around right there. That's what they're gonna look like. It's gonna be a bridge truss covered with built up, hot mop tar and asphalt. And then it'll be most of the time covered by a membrane. And one of the things to mention is that on those membranes, I was always taught not to cut a membrane, and that sort of, with a lot of people, still gospel in the fire service. But what I found over the years is that I think there's two factors. One, our new saws just run so much faster and with more torque, they rip through them. But the newer membranes don't have those long fibrous pieces because they would snarl up in your saw and you're done just like that, like cutting into a carpet, And I checked this with some other guys, like Seattle ladder guy, and they found the same thing, that now they do cut those. But I would just be aware that on an older roof, it can snarl up your saw. We bring them all four because the new blade, we used to have the old comp blades that were totally useless on commercial roofs, and we quit using them on a lot of stuff. But now the blade that we have is also really good for metal deck, which you guys probably have a lot more of up north. And what we found with our rotary saws is if you're doing a lot of cutting on a heavy roof, they start out they're as fast, now that with the good blades, they're as fast as a chainsaw, but they don't slow down. After about 10, 15 minutes of cutting, your saw is gonna just, it's gonna hit a bunch of nails and a bunch of asphalt and stuff and just slow way down. And the K12s will just keep the same speed for 2 hours of cutting. So now we try and use one of those as our main saw, and that's a departure from the past. We just found that the new saws and the new blades are so much better that we count on them quite a bit, especially if you end up with, you'll get some roofs that are 1x, like we've had a few tongue and groove 1x roofs, and those are just hell on chainsaws. But the K12 with the bigger tooth blade just rips right through them. So the way our operation looks is we almost always throw our stick to commercial roofs. I just really like especially if you have a bucket, it's just such a better escape and easier to get up you're less tired when you get there. And it's way better if you have to run and dive onto that tip. I'll go for an aerial anytime over a ground ladder set like this. So when we can, we always hit a corner. Normally we'd be parked angling away, just be out of collapse zones, but that wasn't possible here. We bring everything up, pull it off, start our saws, and on a big commercial roof, a lot of times I will go on air on the roof. But if I'm in doubt at all, we do it on the ground, or I'll do it right before I get off the stick. But on a big roof where the action is down there, we'll get off, go on air, start our saws. And then on any flat roof, I think it's the most important thing is to get a good inspection hole off the bat. And Now this one, I pretty much know what this is going to be, but if it's a flat roof, I don't. It could be, you know, a bar joist and metal deck under that. It could be anything. It could be 4-foot centers between lightweight rafters or something, or, you know, lightweight parallel cord trusses or something like that. So I want to know that right off the bat to avoid, like, I'm sure you heard about our US Bank roof collapse, stuff like that. You want to know if you're on those lightweight wood parallel cord trusses. So we always try and pick out of the path of travel. I'll go about 10 feet in so that, you know, as we're moving around the roof, we're always trying to stay in the stronger zones. And that's just somebody's not likely to step through that. And we try and make it big enough to get an arm in there and feel for something if you need to, and really find out exactly what you're on top of. But not big enough for a firefighter to fully fall through. So like 12 to 18 inches per side triangle works really well. We always make our first cut on the diagonal so that we find the direction that our rafters are running. And on this one, it's obvious, but a lot of the bridge trusses are hipped off of all sides. So you still might need to do that just to see which way it's running. These bridge trusses, really common in the Spokane area. Anything built pre-World War II, you have tons of those on everything from, you know, bowling alleys, offices, to a lot of commercial spaces. And yeah, they're usually spaced about 20 feet apart. They're very heavy duty. They can take a lot of fire, but when they collapse, they tend to collapse. You know, it is a catastrophic collapse when they go, and they'll tend to pull other trusses with them. So you have to be really conscious of your time on the roof and burn time. I wouldn't be up there, like, try not to be up there after it's had 20 minutes of burn time. You can use your 10-minute timers from dispatch to monitor that. But they are pretty safe to operate on. We've been cutting these for, you know, 100+ years safely. And a lot of people on the West Coast cut these all the time. And typically what you have is 2x10 or 2x12 running, of course, at 90-degree angle to the trusses. So they're usually 12 inches or 16 inches on center. And that's why we do, on any of these with 1x6 sheeting, we do dice cuts where we'll cut a long head cut and we'll dice off of that and then pull. And it's pretty simple operation. It is way more efficient for these types of roofs because once you get, you know, of course this would have built up roof and then probably a membrane on top of it. And you got a lot of stuff to remove. When we do have built up roofing, or like when you guys are on your, any of your metal deck roofs where you have the Q deck, a lot of the newer stuff is gonna have thick foam. The older stuff will have built up. And we always do a plug cut first to remove that. If it's pretty light built up, sometimes we'll go straight through. But if you're in doubt at all, plug cut, go at least 6 inches wider than your main cut right off the bat, especially with metal deck, just skimming. And you remove all that and then make your cut. Let's see, what else? So, and then as far as where to cut on this roof, just a good rule of thumb for cutting roofs where you don't have an exact location, you just quarter off the roof, and whatever corner, like say we heard from below or saw some signs rolling up that we had fire in our, what would that be? I guess that would probably be our Delta Alpha corner. And I would probably know that on the way up or get some info from the inside crews. And I would just quarter it off. So here's this quarter, go to the middle of it, cut there. If you're in doubt about the stability of the roof, you can find one of your beams or trusses and make your cuts off of that so that you're, you know, just less exposed. But typically these joisted roofs give us some time to work, and they're usually you will start seeing degradation in the sheeting before they get to the point of being a collapse problem. Okay, so yeah, and we always just travel the exterior. After we'll cut that initial hole, our inspection hole, 10 feet in from a parapet out of our path of travel. We'll make sure we get a look at it, see what we're on, and then we'll travel out to the cut. I'll just point out the cut location, and let me back up 1 minute. As we travel, my first Sawyer off the stick will cut in a couple of indicator holes on the way. You don't need a lot on this roof, it's pretty small. I usually make them about every 15, 20 feet. And your indicator hole's just a small triangle that's not big enough to step through. And if it's a real new roof where you're just talking sheet goods, a lot of times just kerf cuts will work for that. But these heavier roofs, to find an actual indicator hole is good. And then whatever Sawyer's ready first, we'll cut the head cut. And as he cuts, he'll make a hash mark on top of each rafter. Obviously on this one, we can see where they are, but that's not the case when you're rolling up on this in the middle of the night with all the, well, and of course with all the roofing intact. And then Sawyer 2 comes in behind, and he doesn't have to be exact at all. He just has some hash marks where those joists are, and he just roughly cuts in the middle of them. And he'll do, I tell my guys 5 to 6 feet, but really 5 feet is a really nice number. It's easy to pull out that far, and I want to get as much as I can with that initial cut so that if you get burned off after that one cut, you've got a good vent hole already. So I always tell them like 10 to 12 feet on the head cut. The other guy will start dicing, and then the firefighter and myself come by and pull. And with 3 guys, you know, you might have, I do believe on having 2 saws running because it's so common, you know, especially on flat roofs, to get really banked in by smoke if the wind isn't blowing. And if one of your saws dies, it's really nice to have the other one already going. And but you could just have one Sawyer stop early and start pulling, or you pull. I usually help pull, but I view my job on the roof as, first of all, making sure that we have a reason to be up there and communicating with the nozzle team, making sure that they're ready for vent. And in this one, it's nice because we can start dicing and wait to pull until I get on the radio and just make sure. And I might, if I see signs that it's getting hit from below, I'll just have the guys start pulling. But if I'm in doubt at all on any commercial building, I think it's really important to have that over the radio communication, just making sure they have water ready. So there's just so many things that can hold you up inside, just tall ceilings, HVAC, drop ceiling, all of that stuff. And we don't do that on a lot of our house roofs because, you know, you get a little story and a half in Shadle or something. The coordination is just seeing that there's a lead going in the front door and you know they have access to it. I think it's super important that we go into a different mode on these roofs. And I think it's also important to give a roof report when you do it, at least saying what type of truss you have, what the spans are, any heavy roof loads, and extent of involvement. Do you guys have any questions about it? Does that match up pretty well with what you guys have done in the past? I think for me, a lot of it is just finding out what type of
and one important thing, if he doesn't run into a joist or a rafter or anything, like he's going to continue that 45 until he hits one and make his.
But anytime you see that shape, you're probably at bridge
in the middle of space.
Anytime you don't know anything about the roof.
Okay, and then as we walk out,
both strings or, you know,
Is there a hook hand?
And I cut those exactly the same way because they're, even though you're on that,
So,
you know, it's still the same thing. The joists are running perpendicular to those, and you can still do the dice cut. Still the best way to go on those. Okay. All right, so we'll just do a walkthrough. Okay, so Kyle's gonna go off the parapet, out of the path of travel, start with his 45. And one important thing, if he doesn't run into a joist or a rafter or anything, he's gonna continue that 45 until he hits one and make his hole over that. Otherwise, we're just in the middle of space and we don't know anything about the roof. Okay, and then as we walk out to our, let's see, is there a hook handy? Can you grab me a hook? Oh, so I'll just be sounding as we go.
Cut here.
So he'll just do another triangle. It just makes a good starting point for our pulling. And, you know, we can see what our conditions are right there. And he's just making a small hash mark over each of the rafters. Tyson comes behind. He wants to get a full, like a nice 5-foot cut. And he's just aiming for the center of those hash marks. And at that point, I'd get on the radio and just, you know, probably sound something like, engine 4, are you ready for vent? And if they say they're ready, we just start. And when you're pulling these, the best thing is to just ride your hook right over the rafter, and it's just little sharp strokes and it'll just fly off. That's pretty much it. You don't need a tail cut on these. One important thing is always to work back towards your ladder so that you're not, you know, trapping yourself on the other side of the fire. And at that point, I would go around and, depending on conditions, of course, but in general, I would go around and make some indicator holes so I can see what kind of spread we have and be able to monitor, like, you know, is this whole thing consumed by fire or have we confined it to this area? And as soon as we get our vent, we're gonna move back to the parapet and, you know, wait for direction from command. But I think it's good to keep, you know, a lot of the tendency is to really quickly pull your roof crew off. But I just always view the roof crew as the eyes and ears for the guys inside and for command. Nobody else can see conditions like we can. So if you're getting pulled off the roof, it's probably time to get guys out inside too, because yeah, there's just nobody else that can monitor fire spread and you know how much the roof is weakened by fire. I mean, of the guys killed in LODDs in roof collapses, I can't remember the exact number, but like 70 or 80% of them are guys down below. It's pretty relatively rare that the roof crew is the one that goes down in that. I don't know. Should we just do our full speed? Oh, and one other thing, the biggest thing I've seen especially on commercial roofs, and you've probably seen it on residential too, every time a roof cut gets caught up, I would say most of the time it's people not cross-hatching their corners enough, because when you have that much roofing and you just barely cross them, it's really easy to have a little 1/2 inch chunk of wood there, and that will totally shut you down for a while. So I always tell guys to cross hatch a hand's width, and when you do run into problems, rather than trying to fix it with your trash hook, I always just hit the sawyer on the back and point, and he knows that just means go in there and do some more cutting. Another thing is, if conditions are really bad and you can't see those hash marks, or you're just moving really fast and don't have time to make them, the nice thing about dicing is that it actually doesn't require that. If you know you're on a 12-inch spacing and you just dice every 12 inches, you're gonna be able to pull that. It works really nice if you make your cuts in the field, but you can do it without that. Dicing is designed to be, you could just show up, just know the joist direction, and you'd be fine as long as you're dicing in the direction of the joist. Yeah. Any other things, Kyle, that we usually talk about that we haven't covered? A lot of times on these roofs, like if you guys end up, there is a chance you guys could end up on one of our downtown buildings, because, we could have the first 2 ladders in on search. And there, anytime there are light wells, then a lot of times we'd be looking after our heat hole to move back and trench at the throat of the light well, where just roof gets really narrow, great spot to trench. And in that case, if it's a bigger roof, this roof just isn't anything that's like a square or rectangle that's pretty fat everywhere, it rarely makes sense to trench, but a lot of our stuff it does. And so immediately after cut the heat hole, we'll cut indicator holes back from it towards our trench, and that way we can monitor the fire spread. We can start cutting our trench, and then I'll wait to pull it until I get, I'll make my last indicator hole like 6 feet from the trench, and when fire hits that, we'll just start pulling. Not really anything that doesn't really pertain to this roof, but that's something that happens quite a bit. Oh yeah, I would say extending the cut on these, the best way to do it is just extend your head cut. But if you do a 12-foot head cut and then your dice cuts are 5 feet, you got 60 square feet of opening. That's very close to that 8x8 that, Mittendorf and some guys call for. And that's what I go for on a commercial roof. I'll try and get 8x8. So if you would make your initial head cut a little longer, you're assured of a big hole. If you continue to go in the direction of, of your dice cuts, a lot of guys will do that. And on some roofs that works fine, but on any of these old pre-World War II with built up, you end up with a huge spoil pile at the tail end of your cut, and you have to move that before you can extend it. So that's why I prefer just, extending in the other direction and making a longer head cut. Anything else, Kyle?
You want to talk about like a normal firefighter ops on like a residential, like checking the light wells, checking the exterior?
Yeah, I guess we could.
I didn't know how
Yeah.
you wanted to get into that.
Yeah, we're rarely going to see it on this, but hell, they've got some of those. I mean, even up in Hilliard, you've got a lot of old flat roofs that are like our downtown buildings, and you guys have a...
Like if we're going to make a video about it, like for the department.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get one that's... But I'll go through it anyhow. So right when we get to the roof, this wouldn't come into play usually on an arch timber or a bridge truss roof, but any of our flat roofs downtown, a lot of times there's a bulkhead door that opens over the stairs, especially in our apartment buildings or taxpayers, all that stuff. So I'll have my firefighter go straight to the bulkhead, take the bulkhead door or a hatch. Sometimes there's a hatch. A lot of times those are left open. If they're the big metal hatches and they're locked from the inside, you're probably not going to get it. I wouldn't waste your time on it. But a lot of times those are just left unlocked and you can pop them. If we are in one of our old residence, apartments downtown, I'll have him just check the stairs, give me a report of the fire conditions on the top floor. Obviously, you have to have a firefighter that is senior enough to be trusted with that assignment, but because they found a lot of people on, stairs that get cut off from the fire and try and go up to the roof. So just checking for victims on the stairs, quick check of fire conditions on the top floor and back up, just making sure that he isn't in a dangerous position while he does it. And after that, he'll go around and take skylights. I wouldn't do this on a high rise because there you're dealing with, stack effect and other things that can create blowtorch hallways. But in like 5 stories and below, I think it's still a good practice to take your bulkhead door, take your skylights. They're over stairwells or hallways and you're just venting for life and giving the top floor or that stairwell, giving people a safe way out of the building. And then he'll do, on our downtown buildings, he'll do one lap around and look down light wells and blind walls in case somebody's, if you look around at a lot of these, it'll be a 5-story next to a 1-story and all of those windows are blind to everybody else on scene. And obviously the light well windows, we're the only ones that can see them. So I have my firefighter check all the light wells and blind walls, and then he comes and joins and pulls the cut.